What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Big Movie Boys podcast. A little bit different this week. We couldn't find a time that worked for both Ben and Bob and I to all record together, but I still wanted to do a Barbenheimer episode. So what we did is I recorded with Ben. We talked about Barbie. I recorded with Bob. We talked about Oppenheimer, and I'm going to stitch that all together, and that is the episode for this week. But before we talk about either of the movies, I wanted to talk to both of the boys about their thoughts on Barbenheimer weekend. All right, so Ben, thank you for joining me to talk about Barbie. But first, we're going to talk about the lead up to Barbenheimer. What did you think of this? Is it a psyop? Is it grassroots, people just being excited for the movies? What was your kind of impression on the hype leading up to this movie weekend?
The hype reminded me of like Don't Worry Darling for some reason, just because it was like all on the internet and that's all I was seeing about it. And was Tom Cruise the first person to be like, let's make it a double feature? Did Tom Cruise, or should I say Ethan Hunt, really start the Barbenheimer effect? Because I just don't know where that actually started. What is the initial reason for people wanting to see both movies on the same day?
I don't think it was Tom Cruise, although he did as part of his promotion for Mission Impossible. He's like, yeah, of course I'm going to go see Barbenheimer, even though he's like, fuck you, you're taking away all my IMAX theaters. No one's going to see Mission Impossible anymore.
I did see they went way down on in money in that second weekend for Mission Impossible.
Yeah, so I think that's what he was really saying. Like, he was hiding the tears back when he said he was seeing Barbenheimer. I think it was pretty genuine, just kind of internet culture, people memeing and it becoming kind of a thing. But I think it really just comes down to the juxtaposition between the two movies. You have the super pink, super saturated, super vibrant, funny comedy movie based on a toy for little girls being released the same weekend as a 3-hour biopic from Christopher Nolan about the guy who created the atomic bomb. Not a comedy, not very pink. So I think just the two of them, how basically the two opposite movie-going experiences happening on the same day was just funny, and people enjoyed it and wanted to make kind of a joke and an event out of it. Even on, I don't know if you saw my Instagram story, I just put girl movie, boy movie as I was going to see both of them. I think it was
Should I even say that?
I think it was just the juxtaposition between the two that made it fun for people.
I think it's pretty fucking cool. The biggest thing I like about it is it appears that it happened kind of organically. Like, people just realized these movies are coming out the same weekend. People got psyched. Obviously, there's a big difference between Barbie and Oppenheimer. So people kind of thought that was, fun in itself. I don't know if this has happened before. I think my biggest fear about it is this is obviously successful. This podcast is coming out. Both movies did very well. I'm just afraid they're going to try to recapture the magic on purpose and then ruin a bunch of other fucking movies. I'm also very happy you took up smoking, a lifelong healthy habit, just for the bit. I couldn't be prouder of you. And speaking of healthy lifelong habits, first podcast with the liquor.
Yes, I did, for the first time in my life ever, broke a 27-year streak to purchase a pack of cigarettes for this bit. So I will continue to stick it in my mouth. Don't intend on smoking them, though. So
you think that now? That's how they get you.
Would that be the dumbest way to get addicted to cigarettes ever?
Yes, 100%.
I agree. But I also agree with you that I think it's cool. I think, and a lot of other people have commented on this, but I do think there was a world where this could have grown and could have become like a Barbie versus Oppenheimer thing where the two movies were pitted against each other. And that also would have made sense given how different the movies were. But I think it's a lot cooler and a lot better that it just became a celebration of the two coming out together and just a celebration of movies and going to movie theaters and stuff like that.
That's a great point, because you're right. For some reason, I didn't even think of that as a possibility. Everybody, the whole Barbenheimer thing was, we're seeing both in one day. It's not we're picking one or picking the other. Yep. You obviously did that, so I mean, you know all about it.
Yeah, and I like I said, it very easily could have turned into a competition, but instead it became something that celebrated the two movies, and I think, and pretty objectively, it helped boost both movies to overperform. Both of them did better than they were projected.
I wish we lived in a world where it was possible now that Christopher Nolan had to do his Barbie take and Greta Gerwig did her Oppenheimer take. Same weekend, let's go in 2 years.
I would like to see that as well, actually. And I mentioned Nolan in that lead up and didn't mention Greta Gerwig, but I think that's the other thing is it's two directors that people are very
Like
fond of,
great, yeah.
two auteurs in their craft. And then just again having two movies that aren't, I mean, one is IP based and one's based on history, but that aren't part of franchises. They're, original ideas, not entirely, but, in this age of movie going, it feels like original ideas. So I do think that that is a big part of everything that led up to it. Now, you have not seen either of these movies yet. You didn't partake in Barbenheimer, but had you, what is the order? How are you going to see these movies? Are you taking a break in between? Are you going back to back? What's your game plan?
As someone who struggles to finish movies in one sitting, would have definitely hurt. It would have been a struggle to go back to back. I would have done. I still think I want to try it somehow. I don't know if Tina will let me just leave for 5 hours, so I don't know if I'll have the grace to do that. But I
It
think
was
Barbie
seven
first.
hours for me, by the way.
7 hours. So, well, I'll ask you what you did in a second. But so I would do Barbie first, and then I would take a break, get some food, try to kind of recharge there a little bit, maybe go to the bathroom once or twice, and then go see Oppenheimer. Just kind of have your mind blown. It seemed like seemed like the way people leaned.
I feel like a lot of the stuff, I saw a lot of little itineraries on Twitter, and people were doing like mimosas and then seeing Barbie and then like going to get like a steak dinner and seeing Oppenheimer. I would do it. I believe I would do it the opposite. I would try to knock Oppenheimer out in the morning. Reason being, it's 3 hours fucking long. If I can get through that in the morning, it's smooth sailing the rest of the day. That's when I'm at my most awake. No offense to Barbie. If I miss something in Barbie, not the end of the world. I don't want to miss a single second of Oppenheimer. That's why I want early in the morning, get it out of the way, and then I would just get real. I would watch Oppenheimer sober. Barbie, I got to be a little fucked up for it. So Oppenheimer in the morning, get a little fucked up, and then go watch Barbie that night. Ideally, like a 7 o'clock showing. Get out, hit the fucking town. That's my Barbenheimer weekend. I think you did the opposite though.
I did. My game plan going in was always Barbie first, Oppenheimer second. Now, for what you're describing, I totally agree. Barbie's the one that you want to go out on because it's going to be the fun one. You get some drinks before, you get some drinks after, you're just having a good time. Not going to disagree with that slightly. My reasoning going into it, knowing I was going to watch both on Thursday, and I was just seeing them by myself, was that I wanted to see Barbie first because I knew that that would be the funner, lighter movie. Obviously, given, between the two, I assumed that was going to be the lighter movie. And then, for me personally, save the one that I was more looking forward to, which was Oppenheimer, for second. That way, I just prefer generally to save the best for last. That's usually my mentality. And then also, I assumed coming out of Oppenheimer was probably going to leave me on a bit of a downer and leave me thinking about the movie a lot longer. So I didn't want those lingering thoughts carrying with me into Barbie and potentially ruining that experience for me.
Fair point there. I guess I do agree with that. Is that I'm assuming Oppenheimer definitely has a more somber tone to it. But I don't know. At the same time, you could sort of do my reversal, and Barbie picks you back up. I would be a little worried that it would carry over, and maybe I wouldn't be as invested in Barbie. But that's why I would be drunk. So problem solved.
I think there is a compromise there somewhere.
So, what movie did you wake up thinking about then?
The next day.
Yeah, what was like the first one you like that you wanted to go read about or like see what people were saying?
Honestly, initially I was just kind of looking through Twitter at the reaction to both because I feel like at least on my timeline it was a lot of people talking about both movies the next day. I can say that since watching them, I've seen Oppenheimer again, so I think that's the one that kind of sat with me a bit more and the one I wanted to see right away again. But that being said, I also had a lot of fun with Barbie, and that's the one that I think I taught to people who hadn't seen either of them yet. I feel like over the weekend I was talking about Barbie more and like convincing people if they were on the fence that they should go see Barbie.
Yeah, it seemed like on that shitty website we now call X, I guess, people were more so talking about Barbie. I don't know if that was just more because incels were telling people not to go watch it while simultaneously going to watch it and making more people just want to see it to see what was so bad about it, what was so what the Chinese were trying to sneak in there. But so I thought I saw more like discourse about that, but that also could be anytime I saw the meme of Cillian Murphy or Killian Murphy, however the hell, I'm never gonna learn, so never tell me. but talking to Einstein or just like looking like upset about himself for coming up with the idea. Anytime I saw that, I wouldn't read it because I just didn't want to see anything.
Fair. As we mentioned already, just looking at like, what happened, what was the outcome of the weekend itself. I did see both on Thursday, and I'll say as someone who goes to the theater like pretty regularly, like a couple times a month, usually for the Thursday night openings or at the very least opening weekends, this was the busiest I've seen a movie theater in a long time too.
Really?
And I went to two different theaters, and both of them packed. Both like theaters, the showings themselves were packed. Everyone seeing Barbie was dressed in pink. Like it was just a lot of people, and I haven't seen or experienced something like that in quite a long time.
Yeah, probably what 2019, back of Avengers: Infinity War or Endgame.
Yeah,
That's probably the last time you've been
yeah.
to theater that back. Did you partake in any of the shenanigans? Did you wear any pink? Did you wear this little get up to see Oppenheimer?
No, I didn't have this get up until after. This is special for the podcast. I didn't. I just wore whatever I was wearing that day. I didn't really do anything. I didn't even see. I saw a lot of pictures of like the big Barbie box that you could take pictures in
Yeah,
that people are posting online, and I didn't see that setup in either of the theaters I went to.
shit.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about Oppenheimer in a second, but I ended up seeing Oppenheimer again on Monday.
Oh, oh,
And the theater was just as busy, just as many people wearing pink. The Oppenheimer show I went to was basically sold out, if not entirely sold out, like even through Monday. And I think through this past week, like it's been holding strong. IMAX tickets in particular are like sold out for Oppenheimer for a while. Barbie tickets are hard to come by. It's doing gangbusters, both of them.
damn.
But so the box office, the results of that was opening weekend for Barbie, $162 million, and for Oppenheimer, $82.5 million, making it the fourth biggest weekend at the box office ever. The top three were when Infinity War, Endgame, and The Force Awakens comes out. So those three movies alone carried those top three weekends.
Yeah.
These two combined made it the fourth biggest weekend at the box office.
And that's just domestic, right? Because I thought I saw bigger numbers for like Barbie globally.
Yeah, Barbie's approaching 400 million, I think, in total.
Jesus.
But yeah, that was just domestic opening weekend numbers there, and also Nolan's biggest opening weekend since The Dark Knight Rises. So his
I
biggest
was gonna
opening
say.
post Batman.
I was gonna say there's absolutely. I thought you were about to say that it was his biggest opening weekend. As soon as the words are coming out of your mouth, I was like, "There's no fucking way."
Yeah, no. In a post Dark Knight world, it's his biggest opening. So bigger
Good for
than.
him though. I feel like this cements him as the biggest director in Hollywood. If he didn't already claim that spot, I think this movie absolutely he is now the biggest director in Hollywood. I think unquestioned after this movie.
He's definitely one of the few who can get a budget like this to make a movie like this and fill seats like this for what the story is and like what the material is. And Barbie had a budget of I think 150 or 120 million dollars, something in that range, and Oppenheimer had a budget of 100 million. So they're not even only just hitting big box office numbers; they're making huge returns on these movies too.
Yeah.
And it was Greta Gerwig's biggest opening, the biggest opening for a female director. So a lot of records being broken, a lot of personal milestones being hit on both sides there.
Yeah, I had only ever seen Lady Bird, so I never saw like Little Women or I think she had one other movie too before this, but I know she was in White Noise in the movie. That's like the only way I'd ever seen her. I was like, oh, that's Greta Gerwig. And then like just when I started seeing pictures of her, like when Barbie was starting to come out, I'm like, oh shit, that's right. Okay. But yeah, I hadn't really like seen other stuff she's done, but now it makes me want to go. I had read the book for Little Women, but I didn't watch I think that was the book. But well, I read a book called Little Women. I don't know if it was based on the movie, but so that was one I wanted to go back and watch too. But now I'm like excited to see Barbie. I'll probably end up waiting now. Like now that I missed like the first weekend, I'll probably be waiting until it's on like Max. But yeah, I feel like maybe I should force myself to just go see it. I don't know what your opinion is on that. You would probably tell me to go see both the same day, but
Yeah, I had a lot of fun watching both of them. And speaking of which, why don't we just talk about Barbie a little bit more directly here? How does that sound?
yeah.
All right, so Barbie, obviously released July 21st, 2023, part of Barbenheimer weekend. written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, directed by Greta Gerwig, starring Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Kate McKinnon, Michael Cera, America Ferrera, and a ton of other people, a lot of other Barbies, a lot of other Kens, a lot of fun casting in this movie. A big weekend for ensemble casts in general, because there's a ton of people in this movie, and everyone who wasn't in this movie was an Oppenheimer, because that cast just never ends either. On top of performing pretty well at the box office, it was being received pretty well. As of recording, it was sitting at a 7.5 on IMDb, an 80 on Metacritic, and a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. So even just anecdotally from my Twitter feed and everything else, aside from the professional grifters who think that, Barbie is going to be the end of masculinity in America, outside of that demographic, it's been, fairly overwhelmingly positive. I think averaging around an 80% is pretty on par with what I've been seeing most people say. But, won't get into any spoilers since you haven't seen it, and I'm sure a lot of people listening haven't seen it, but top level notes is that if you're looking to have just a silly, goofy, fun time, the Barbie movie is what you should be watching. I think their highest priority was creating Barbie Land, and the production designers, the costume designers, everyone who was involved in doing that, 10 out of 10, knocked it out of the park. I unironically think this should be considered for like production design Oscars and stuff.
I feel like it might. I feel like both these might get nominated for like a lot of the same things, probably. Just when it comes to that, but I was thinking because like Ryan Gosling's one of my favorite actors. He's in like a lot of movies that I just am like A Place Beyond the Pines, even like The Nice Guys with Kurt Russell. I think it is just random movies. Maybe it's not Kurt Russell, someone else. But
Russell Crowe.
Just thank you. But just movies like that, just random movies like that he's in. I'm like, oh, I really enjoy that movie. And then obviously La La Land, just a great movie. And ever since then, I've just been hooked and want to see everything he's in. And everything I've seen with him seems like he plays like a dopey character really well. And that's like kind of the big hook of what I want to see.
Yeah, I will say like performances across the board were very good. Like Margot Robbie is possibly perfect casting for this. And there's even like kind of a meta joke in the movie about her being cast as Barbie, which is very funny. Kate McKinnon, Michael Cera, America Ferrera, like I think everyone does really well. And I know this is like a big female empowerment, strong feminine movie. Sorry, ladies, but Ryan Gosling steals the shit.
Is he just super funny at it? He just seems like he had like the best time of his life filming this movie.
I think he did, because I had the best time of my life watching him in this movie. I'm also a fan of Ryan Gosling. This convinced me to watch The Nice Guys. Just this past
He's funny
weekend.
in that.
God damn, is that a funny movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan Gosling really, really steals the show in this one for me. He's pretty perfect as Ken. And without saying what it is, he's wearing an article of clothing at the very end, which made me laugh and is also available for pre-order. So I will be ordering that article of clothing that Ken is wearing towards the end of the movie.
I saw a funny line just about him saying how Austin Butler refused to stop being Elvis. Seems to be Ryan Gosling refused to stop being Ken, and that seems like a funny parallel.
Yeah, he does seem like in all of his interviews and stuff and everything, he seemed to be continuing his Kenergy and momentum. I was gonna try to put Ken in the word momentum, but it didn't. Kentum, there it is. And that's been fun to watch as well. But I also think part of it is like there's a lot of Barbies and there's a lot of Kens in the movie. Like obviously you've seen a lot of the character posters, I'm sure, but I feel like Ryan Gosling's Ken gets a lot more screen time proportionally than even like Margot Robbie's Barbie, because I feel like we see a lot of other Barbies. We deal with a lot of other Barbies more so than the other Kens. There's like Simu Liu, who's kind of like the antagonist Ken, and we get Michael Cera's Alan, who's like the only Alan, which is also funny. But
wait, so Simu Liu, he is a Ken?
Yeah.
But then Michael Cera is just Alan.
Oh, all of the men that you've seen in the movie are Kens, except for Michael Cera, who's Alan. He's Ken's friend.
I did not realize that. That's so great.
And all of Ken's clothes fit him. But other than like Simu Liu definitely gets the second most screen time as the next most important Ken. and then there's other ones who get a little bit of a little moment here or two. But he's definitely like the Ken that we spend the most time with. So we get a lot of him. And obviously we get a lot of Margot Robbie as well, but there's I feel like a little bit more of a emphasis on learning who the other Barbies are and giving them all a little moment to shine as well.
Yeah, I
Um,
see some good memes about America Ferrera coming out so far.
yep, a lot of people like her. She gives a good monologue uh, closer to the end of the movie, kind of going into the third act, where it's all about what it's like to live as a woman in a male-dominated society, and a lot of people clearly were feeling that. There was a lot of laughs from specific moments in that in the theater as well. So I do think a lot of people were feeling seen and heard in that moment, and her character is kind of the heart of the movie once you actually
Yeah.
kind of get to that part of it.
Is the layout of the movie like they're in Barbie Land for like a decent chunk of it, and then they're in like our world or the real world then for most of it? Or is it mostly Barbie Land and then a little bit of the real world?
It's definitely mostly Barbie Land. You start in Barbie Land, you end up in the real world for a little bit, and then you go back to Barbie Land, and then that's pretty much where you spend the majority of the movie at that point.
It seems more fun in Barbie Land.
It is definitely more fun because everything just on top of just the look of it, it's also uh the style of the movie changes a little bit because you're dealing with characters who are technically toys, and like they even make a joke about like is what is this world? Is it a fantasy land? Is it real? Is it another dimension? And they're just like, uh-huh. So it allows you to just kind of do whatever you want and get away with it in a way that works, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like when movies go from like a fairyland or fairy tale land to a real world, it kind of loses. I've only seen like two or three of these probably, but I feel like I get lost when it becomes the real world. It just becomes like less of a movie because then it just seems like people playing actor, like just playing dress up in the real world. Whereas like when they're back in the fairy tale land, it feels like, okay, I'm back in this movie then.
Yeah. And then kind of the biggest like overall note that I had is like so I went to this movie, a recently turned 27-year-old man. Don't have much of a history with Barbies. Never owned any. Can't really say I played with them, almost ever, but not having any personal relationship with the brand or any like personal touchstone with Barbie in general, and not knowing the history or the lore of Barbie or anything, I still feel like they maximized everything they could do with this IP. Like if you're gonna make an IP based movie, I feel like the what you should do is use it to its absolute fullest potential, whatever that looks like for all these different movies. I think that's what Spider-Verse is doing so well, is like they have this world to play with and they do it basically as good as you could ask them to. And I think that that's what they did here. There's a lot of jokes about like discontinued versions of Barbies. There's lots of jokes like at Mattel and stuff like that. And just like the production design on like what Barbie's dream house looks like and how Barbie interacts with the things around her in Barbie Land is, I think they just had a lot of fun with it and they really maximized what they could do with it.
Yeah, that part of it seems fun. I guess I'm just worried about not that I'm that worried about it, but there's not going to be a Barbie 2, right? I'm not going to have to like pay attention too hard. I can just enjoy the movie. They'll never do another one.
I hope not, honestly. I won't say it. They didn't really, tee themselves up for it or anything. It didn't end with Barbie will return in, whatever other Mattel movie is going to come out next year or anything like that. I don't think they're making the Mattel Avengers, but
That's good.
who knows? Um, so those are, my general praises of the movie. I do want to get a little bit critical. There's a couple things that I thought, might be worthy of mentioning. The overall story, the plot scene to scene, I do feel like sometimes is a little bit disjointed. I think the second half of the movie in particular, things just kind of move forward and it's fine because you're still having fun the whole time. But if you like stop to think like, how did we get here or why are we going in this direction? Sometimes it's like, I feel like we missed something. We're just kind of moving forward for the sake of moving forward.
Do you think scenes were cut, or do you think they were just like, ah, fuck it, let's just keep rolling?
It's possible. I don't know. I feel like the script just gets a little bit messy.
When
Just
they're in the real world?
no, it's even when they come back. It's
Okay.
basically when they
Okay.
as they come back from the real world and moving forward is when it kind of gets a little bit messy in my opinion. Again, not doesn't ruin the movie by any means. You're still having fun. It's still very funny. It's just the actual if you're trying to pay attention beat to beat as the story progresses, it can feel a little bit uh
So the movie you're saying it's not very realistic?
that is my big complaint, yeah. Is the lack of realism, especially when it comes to Barbie Land. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too specific again, but I think you may recognize what I'm talking about if you had seen the movie. Kind of similarly, like we were joking earlier about the people who were like upset about the message of this movie, and like obviously Barbie as a IP is focused at little girls. I think the message of this movie is focused at little girls and women for the most part. Understandably, as much as the movie is, I think, just kind of like a family fun, kind of for everyone movie. I do think the initial theme message that they're delivering definitely resonates more with women. Um, and they also kind of use that as a springboard to also have themes about just what it means to be human in general. So that's not to say it's alienating anyone or anything. Like I do think that there's pretty well executed themes when it comes to like what it means to be human. I think the initial messaging as far as what it means to be a woman and the struggles of being a woman in a male dominated society are often just explicitly told to you by characters as opposed to being a little bit more subtle. There's a particular scene in the movie that, from what I've been seeing on Twitter, most people unanimously agree is the best scene in the movie. And it's a very short, very subtle moment that really delivers the theme and the message that they were going for without explicitly stating it. And because of that, it almost feels like out of place. Because every other time they want to deliver a
They're
theme or a
talking to
message,
you.
they'd just say it.
Yeah.
So that's like my only complaint with it is just how on the nose and straightforward it is in that sort of thing. But that being said, I still think it's a positive message overall. I'm not gonna wet my pants about it like some people in the theaters were.
That's probably like Greta Gerwig being a little worried that so many little girls were going to come and kind of miss what she was trying to tell them. Maybe she wasn't as worried about you figuring it out, but someone who's younger just to take away something rather than just be like, oh, that was fun. Just take a little something away. I just can't even imagine, even if this movie was horrible and they just were like the whole time men are better than women.
Yeah.
I just can't even fathom leaving that and being upset, like just getting
And
so offended.
even if that was the message of the movie, I wouldn't be upset. But it's not. like like I've seen that as like a common criticism, and those people either just most likely didn't
Yeah,
see the movie or went into it to it just assuming that that was going to be the case
ready
and
to get mad. Yeah.
yeah, didn't care either way and just said that. But yeah, that's very much not the message of the movie. Even if it was, like, who cares? But yeah, the Kens are all goofy and stupid in Barbie Land, but the message of the movie isn't that all men are bad or whatever people were trying to complain
I thought
about.
that's just what the character of Ken was, anyways, that he's just kind of a good looking idiot.
He's just kind of a himbo, but
Exactly.
whatever. My final critique of the movie is if you're going to this movie for a Will Ferrell joint, he might as well not be in it.
See, just in that one scene where he's like, Ken, we have no problems with Ken.
He shows up a few times, but I mean, he does have very little screen presence. Like, he's not in the movie for very long, and his impact is even smaller. Like, you could literally cut him out of the movie and almost nothing would change.
I wonder how much they paid him too to be in it. I feel like they could have had someone else then.
Yeah, it was very strange because they go to Mattel in the real world. He's the CEO. He's got his board of directors around him, and they come back every so often, but are virtually useless. Like, there's essentially no point to having them whatsoever, I guess, other than to put Will Ferrell's name on it. But he's a non-player in this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, just be warned of that.
When's the last time you went to a movie because of Will Ferrell?
That is a good question. What is
I
the
think
last?
mine might be like Anchorman 2, and I think I went and saw that because I'm just such a big fan of Anchorman, and it just was way too long and just not as good then.
I don't even know what the last Will Ferrell movie I saw in a theater was.
Probably Daddy's Home too for you.
I think it honestly might have been Elf.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Because I'm trying to think, like, even his other comedies that I love, I don't think I saw them in
I
theaters.
think I saw Step Brothers in theaters.
I don't think
That
I
sounds
did.
familiar.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
so you really didn't watch Barbie for Will Ferrell then?
no, I mean, I knew he was in it. I was excited to see what happened, and then he wasn't really in it. So that's just a note of warning for anyone going out of their way to watch the new Will Ferrell movie. You gotta wait a bit longer. um, yeah, just a couple other notes. Just some fun things here and there. The music overall is fun. I don't know if you've listened to the soundtrack. They released a bunch of songs prior to the movie. I don't know if you've heard any of them, but a lot of
Tina
fun.
was playing a couple. I just know it wasn't Hans Zimmer, so I didn't really listen to that many of them.
A lot of fun songs. They're incorporated in the movie in fun ways, so that's definitely a plus. The only slight caveat I'll add to that is they don't have the original Barbie Girl by Aqua.
Yeah.
They only have the remix that just came out with Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice.
Did they not get the rights to that one? That's the jam.
I don't know. I mean, no disrespect to Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice. I like that version too, but I think Aqua earned a spot in this
Yeah, I
movie.
thought at the very least, I thought it might be like the credits.
I'm pretty sure that's where the new version is. It's just over the
Mm,
credits. And I was like, that's the only thing this movie was missing in my opinion. When I talked about like
yeah.
using the IP to its maximum potential, I do think not having the original song by Aqua was a miss. The credits when they pop up, the first thing of credits is pretty funny because it's just 12 listings that all say Barbie, 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 Barbie,
Yeah.
and then the
They
actresses who
just played
played
Barbie.
Barbie. Yeah. So like the whole first list of credits is just all the
Barbie.
Barbies, which is pretty funny. That's the first thing it punches too. Um, but yeah, and then I think I already mentioned right that it inspired me to purchase a $60 hoodie. So this movie just keeps getting money from me, and I will probably watch it again once it comes to streaming.
You've spent more money on the hoodie than the movie itself. Who's making the hoodie then? Is the
It's from Mattel. It's
Oh, okay.
as seen in the movie.
That's pretty dope. I can't wait to see it. Are you just gonna wait to break it out when you get home? Are you gonna try it right
Uh,
on in Denver there?
it's a pre-order and it's not going to ship until like the end of September. So,
Bummer.
I'll be over it by the time I actually get it. But for now, they're going to capitalize on my hype.
Yeah. I guess you'll just be Ken for Halloween this year, handing out candy in your apartment.
Maybe, maybe. But yeah, overall, those are my thoughts on Barbie without spoiling too much. I do think it's very fun. It's very funny. Uh, if you like Ryan Gosling, if you like Margot Robbie, if you ever played with a Barbie, if you just want to have a silly, fun, goofy time at a movie theater, I would definitely recommend it. So, what are you thinking? Have I convinced you?
You've I think you've convinced me even more to definitely watch it. I just hope that this doesn't lose its momentum. I hope I do go and see it. I want to go see both movies. I hope I just make myself do it. And I almost feel like I'm letting you down if I don't, which is always fun too. So the worst case scenario, you'll be a little upset with me.
Well, I'm looking forward to when you and Bob finally watch both these movies, maybe 6 weeks from now, and then we can do this podcast all over again and actually talk
That'll
about
be
them.
way more fun.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up Barbie. We're going to move on to talking about Oppenheimer with Bob. Anything you want to say to Bob from across time and space here?
I just want to say this has been more fun without Bob, just a little refresher, just a little more calm. We're talking about a fun movie. Bob doesn't hit me with so many swear words or anything. I know I like to swear too, but yeah, Bob really gets after it. But I'm a little jealous of you guys talking about Oppenheimer. But yes, no spoilers, so I'm excited to listen to that part of it. Because yeah, I won't be spoiled. I just didn't want to talk about it with you.
Fair enough. All right. Let's pass it over to Bob and future Jeremy. All right. Well, shall we talk a bit about Oppenheimer?
Let's do it.
It, of course, released on July 21st, 2023, written by Christopher Nolan, based on the book American Prometheus by Kai Bird and Martin Sherwin. also directed by Christopher Nolan. The movie stars Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, and every other male actor you've ever heard of. Even if you don't think they're in the movie, they're there somewhere. Name an actor, they're in this movie. It is, we talk about stacked casts a lot, we talk about star-studded casts a lot, and even Barbie had a star-studded cast and a packed cast. But man, if you wanted to see a white male actor in a movie, this is the one to see. um, so you haven't seen it yet. It's based on the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer. Do you have any context of him or, the Manhattan Project going into this?
All I really know is, I remember I might have known that he worked on the atomic bomb just back from school. Obviously, something I would have forgotten. But I remember when the teaser poster came out and it was, announced. I looked up who Oppenheimer was. I knew that he worked on the atomic bomb. He's some type of scientist. Um, and really, that was about all I knew about him. I sort of my plan, if I was going to see the movie on time, like I should have, was to go in sort of blind, and that's really all I needed to know. Christopher Nolan movie about the guy that worked on the atomic bomb. I don't know. Did he create it? Did he? That's not a spoiler. You can tell me that.
Yeah.
Was he the head honcho on the project? It
Yeah.
seems like previous he is.
So, just to tell you where I was at going into it, I also didn't really know much. I knew of J. Robert Oppenheimer. I knew he was the father of the atomic bomb. I knew they built a bomb, they tested it in the desert, they dropped it on Japan. That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge on all that. Yes, he is pretty much the guy they put in charge of this project. It was obviously a team effort with multiple scientists, but he's the guy that they had leading it, and therefore why he kind of gets all the fame and all the infamy and the title of father of the atomic bomb. But all that to say, go for it.
That I have no idea if is actually true or not, but it was something they told us growing up. For all the listeners at home, there used to be a giant atomic waste field in the middle of mine and Jeremy's hometown. Allegedly, they always told us that part of the Manhattan Project was worked on there. No idea if that's actually true. I don't know if that's just an urban legend. I've never actually done any research into it. But if that's the case, that could be problematic for us later on down the line.
I also remembered that little wives' tale right before the movie started, and I was like, what if they talk about some sort of branch of this project happening in Western New York? They don't. Spoiler, they don't. Probably because that was bullshit.
True.
Yeah. That would be my guess. But so the whole movie's based on Robert Oppenheimer's life. It's again based on a book. I'm sure there are exaggerations for the sake of storytelling, but from what I've understood, it's fairly faithful to at least what is known about everything, and it does span a long period of time before, during, and after the creation of the bomb and the use of the bomb. As it should. It's a 3-hour movie, so you got a lot of time to cover there. And I would just say, you don't need to go in knowing really anything more than that. But I do feel like I came out having learned a lot about, this particular thing in history, which is always cool. Again, I don't know if I ever learned it and just forgot it, or if that's just kind of a footnote in our, World War II portion of history class. But I do like that aspect of it. And, this review will try to be spoiler-free as much as I can. But again, it's weird when you talk about spoilers for something that's based on history. It's more just like a lack of knowledge at that point. But
yeah, I think I know what happens in the end.
Yeah. Spoiler, they build the bomb.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
But just to talk about top level thoughts on the movie, goddamn, is this a good movie? So much so that I saw it on Thursday and again on Monday because I couldn't stop thinking about it. My first viewing, as I mentioned last week, I think I saw it in 70 millimeter film, which was kind of a cool experience. It was all film projector. They made a whole announcement, some manager came out at the beginning of the screening and they're like, we don't even have a digital projector set up. So you're only going to see 2 previews, 2 trailers, no Regal commercials, no Pepsi ads, nothing like that. And they even waited until, it was a 7 o'clock show, they waited until 7:10 to even start rolling the 2 trailers because they assumed people were going to show up late to skip the trailers, even though there weren't, that many being shown.
Now, question about the 70 millimeter film. There's only, I thought I searched it, how many places you could look this, or you could see it in this, aspect. There's only a couple in the country, right?
So that is for 70 millimeter IMAX, and
I'm
there's
at, okay, so
there's only like 19, and I think the closest one to me was in Phoenix or something like that.
okay, so you didn't see that one. That's the one where the movie reel is the size of my fucking car.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So my first viewing was just 70 millimeter, not IMAX. My second viewing, I went to IMAX and saw it in real IMAX 4K. So
Okay,
if I
what's
blend
better?
the two experiences together in my mind, I saw it in 70 millimeter IMAX.
But what's better? Because I heard something about him saying that 70 millimeter is the way to see this movie, and I don't know if he was specifying the IMAX version or this version. But I know like the aspect ratio, or whatever he wanted, 70 millimeter is where it's at. So what was better, the IMAX for the experience, or the, I don't know, the integrity of what he wanted in the 70 millimeter? What was better?
My understanding is the 70 millimeter IMAX is like the definitive way to see it. The next best, as far as movie people are saying, is 70 millimeter, and then after that is IMAX. And I'm
Okay.
inclined to agree. However, I think for maybe more general audiences, I would even say IMAX would be preferable because
Well,
seeing
I think I want to see it in.
a good chunk of the movie is shot in big full frame IMAX picture. So like seeing that huge image in front of you for a lot of the scenes is very cool. Granted, it's also a biopic, so it's not like a heavy action movie, but the scenes
Yeah.
that are, extremely large do look very good. So I would say if you have access to either of them, you're not going to be disappointed. And I was trying to help my mom. She's interested in seeing this, so I was helping my parents get tickets. And apparently, there's only one IMAX theater in Buffalo, like
That's true.
which kind of blew my mind. I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a little spoiled out here. I had my picks, but yeah. So I'm sure a turnoff for you is the 3 hour runtime.
Big time.
I can't even explain how fast this movie moves, especially
Really?
considering what it is. It's a biopic about Robert Oppenheimer. It's mostly guys talking in meeting rooms about science or about whatever. That's like 85% of this movie. And yet it moves at such a fast clip. There's like so much energy. And a big part of that, I think, is the score. It was Ludwig Göransson who did the score for this movie. The score is incredible, and it's also relentless. Like, it starts at the beginning of the movie. I can remember two scenes where the music cuts out, but it's basically just ongoing for almost the whole 3 hours. And it really pushes it. The editing and the pacing itself is fast, but I feel like the score is what really just keeps that momentum carrying from scene to scene. And in neither of my viewings did it feel like 3 hours.
It's so tough for me, and I don't mean to. Ben ruined movies for me because ever since we have been doing this podcast, I've always, whenever it's a streaming movie, I'm like, yeah, let me watch it in segments. I'll watch it in parts. There's very few movies that, if they're 3 hours long, I will watch. Like, for example, I don't mind long movies. I watch every year around Christmas. I watch all the Lord of the Rings extended cuts, all three movies. Those are like 5, 6 hours long each. They're ridiculous. But I also watch them in like 4 or 5 parts. I'm trying to watch Avatar 2 right now because it's on Disney Plus. In 3 sittings for me. I'm not done with it yet. That's 3 hours and 16 minutes. It's tough. Like, it's so tough, and like, it's not taking away from my enjoyment of the movie. I don't care that I have 45 minutes left in Avatar 2. I'm going to finish it eventually. Seeing it all in one sitting, I know is obviously superior, but I'm just worried because it's been so long since I've done that I like won't be able to handle it. That's what I'm worried about. But like, if it's a good movie, like if I'm brought in, which it sounds like I should be, I'll hopefully just forget about that.
Yeah, I mean, even on my second viewing, like I was going into it thinking like maybe there's parts I'll get bored in and kind of check out and regret going to see it again. Wasn't the case. I was just enthralled the entire time. And it's 2 minutes shorter than Avengers Endgame, and you don't need to stay through the credits for a post-credit scene.
True. I was just thinking. I was almost about to mention Avengers Endgame because obviously we saw that, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that was 3 hours. That was like a fucking stroll in the park. That felt like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't say it's quite the same, but it did not feel like 3 hours again in either of my viewings.
That's the best thing you could sell the movie on for me.
I
So
I
don't like.
knew I knew I needed that one.
Yeah.
um, as you would expect, like just like the technical filmmaking aspects of this movie are pretty much perfect in my opinion. The cinematography is incredible, the production design, the costume design, like everything feels super real, super authentic. There's some very uh, interesting choices creatively, particularly in the sound, but also in the cinematography and the filming of different things that come back time and time again and are kind of introduced subtly in the background and then come back in big ways, or introduced and then are repeated on and on. And just everything that all the filmmaking again aspects of this are just pretty much no notes on that, as you would expect. The sound mixing is something that is oftentimes point against Nolan films.
Yeah. How is that in this?
It is a lot better. It's not
Okay.
perfect, but it's not Interstellar, where it feels like, you know, you're hearing something and then you're going deaf and then you can't hear anything a character is saying. I've heard some people complain, and it might just be theaters being optimized poorly. But in both of my experiences, I think the mixing was the best in any of his movies, and I could understand pretty much everything everyone was saying.
I get worried about that because, for example, one of the last movies I saw by him, Tenet.
Yep.
Granted, I did watch it on a cell phone, but I feel like there was points in that movie where obviously it's like, I don't know, there has to be a lot of exposition because what the fuck is going on? Somebody is like explaining something super important to the plot, and there's just like music playing over it. I'm like, I can't fucking hear you. Like,
That was one of his most egregious ones, because it's like
yeah,
every piece of dialogue is so important because they're trying to explain this super high science concept to you. But while they're doing it, the score kicks in, a guy puts on a mask so you can't hear what he's saying. It's like, I think that one was on purpose. Like, that one was out of spite.
good trolling us.
Yeah,
This is better though, is what you're saying, which
this is
is.
much better. The
I mean,
best.
to touch on like what you were saying about, I don't know, just the entire everything, costume design and all that. He's always, and just, you know, he's always known for his special effect, not using special effects, using practical effects, and that's something that I'm really intrigued about. And I don't know, I guess I could ask you more towards the end about how does he do the explosion, because something has to explode in this. Uh, and I heard that he didn't use any CGI, anything like that. I mean, we can wait for the end for that because I guess that's the climax of the movie. But I've just always been a big fan of that. Most of his stuff is all practical effects.
Yeah. I mean, we can touch on that now. There's no reason not to. But yeah, so there is a distinction between special effects and CGI. CGI being computer generated images. There's no CGI in the movie. There's still special effects. There's compositing. There's stuff like that. But I mean, that's just, you know, every movie has special effects. The effects that he shot, though, the explosion in particular, was practical, and it was like tons of dynamite, different chemical combinations. I think they were like like exploding ping pong balls or something in parts of it, but it looks really good. It feels real. Um, the 4K in particular looked especially good. I mean, it looks great in 70 millimeter too, but seeing the huge explosion and just everything that, all the different angles they capture and the attention to detail with the lighting and everything, like it's something that you don't get when it is CGI. And like,
Yeah.
even going back to, was it Endgame or Infinity War? I guess it must have been Infinity War. I remember in particular there's the moment where Rhodey is carpet bombing like the edge of the force
Yeah.
field wall in Wakanda, and I
Yeah.
was like, damn, that looks really good. And it turned out that was one of the only like practical effects that they did. They actually like lit off the explosions there. And that's what I mean, where like you can really notice it in stuff like this when it's real versus when it's fake. And I do think even just this one scene, if it had been CGI, would have taken away a lot of what that moment was trying to convey in the movie. So
And the other thing too about all that stuff is it'll age better. I mean, the
yep,
biggest thing whenever we talk about practical effects and why you should use them, the first thing that I always think of is Star Wars,
yep,
specifically the prequel trilogy. When
yep.
I go back and I watch that, like when I watch Attack of the Clones, I'm just like, holy fucking shit! Like it just ages horribly. All the CGI in there, I'm just like, this looks like shit. And God, I feel like it almost takes you out of the movie a lot of the time. So if you do practical effects like that, it's just massive. You know what I mean? Like I'll be able to watch Oppenheimer in 20 years and still get the same enjoyment out of it. So,
Yeah, I mean,
it's been 20 years since Attack of the Clones, and sometimes I literally cannot watch that movie.
I mean, you just compare the 20-year-old Star Wars movies to the 50-year-old Star Wars movies, and the ones that are 50 years old hold up so much better.
Exactly.
And then another just top level thing, the performances in this movie. Holy shit. Cillian Murphy, often been sidelined. He has
Think he
his
gets the
moment.
Oscar?
He's going to be nominated at the very least. So far, for me, it's the best performance I've seen. He's in 98% of this movie. It is a single point of view look at Oppenheimer's life. There's very few moments he's not on the screen.
I'm
So,
happy for him
oh yeah,
because he's been in all these Nolan movies. He's always known as such a good actor, and it's just he deserves this now. And it's a huge Nolan movie, and it's finally his time to shine. I feel like he's always been a supporting actor, never really had the spotlight directly on him. And just hearing you say that he's in 98% of the movie just makes me even more happy. I hope to God he gets the Oscar.
yeah. I mean, he certainly earned it. As far as I'm concerned, we'll see how the rest of the year plays out. But yeah, goddamn to see really, uh, he just nails it from beginning to end. There's so many different elements to what his character is and what he's thinking and doing, and it spans such a long time as well. So you see he has to play the same person, based on a real person, but over different parts of his life and at different moments. And yeah, he really shines in this one for sure. But on top of that, like the cast is huge, and Nolan somehow gets arguably the best performance, or at least like a top three performance out of every person in this cast. It is
Damn.
insane. Uh, Emily Blunt in particular is very good. Again, all these characters or actors I'm gonna mention may not have even the biggest footprint because it's mostly focused on Cillian Murphy, and he talks to dozens of other characters in this, so they all get their moments to shine here and there. But when they do not waste it. Emily Blunt has two of the best moments in this movie. Robert Downey Jr. is like, okay, you guys know me as Iron Man, but also remember that I'm a very good actor, and he's insane in this. Matt
I heard him and
Damon,
Florence Pugh have sex.
there is a sex scene,
The main reason I want to go see the movie.
but all the headlines leading up to this was promising full frontal. And spoiler, Cillian Murphy is not hanging dong in this movie.
That's a shame. Would have loved to see that.
It is disappointing when they promise you something and they don't deliver. Florence Pugh, I mean, she isn't even in it all that much, but she's great. I won't say it's her best performance ever just because she's had so many good ones.
Didn't know she
Similar,
was in it until like 2 weeks ago.
similar to Matt Damon, like he's really, really good in this. But he's had a lot of good roles, so it's hard to say it's his best ever. But everyone showed up, and there's kind of been like the joke running around on Twitter that if Nolan asks you to be in a movie, you say yes. Not only do you say yes, but you give him everything you got. And that's what everyone in this movie did.
It's the star power he commands now. That, like I said in the beginning, I think he is now the go-to director in Hollywood. And he might have already been that before, but hearing your review of the acting in this makes me believe it even more. I think he's there. I think he's the man now,
Yeah.
unquestioned.
I mean, considering, you throw the word auteur around, but he's writing and directing all of his movies, and
Yeah.
to be able to create the projects that he's created is no small feat. A couple minor nitpicks. I truly don't have many criticisms or negative things to say about the movie in general. I touched on the sound mixing. Certainly better, probably the best of Nolan's catalog. Still not perfect. But the sound design that's reincorporated over and over is very good. So I'm willing to kind of forgive it here and there. There's two what I'm calling kind of like MCU moments in this movie,
Oh,
um,
no.
which aren't as bad as I'm making them out to be. It's more of just something I want to call out than an actual criticism. But Oppenheimer gets kind of a suit up moment, which is
Oh,
pretty funny. And you could easily like, I haven't even seen anyone else call this like a superhero suit up moment, but there is a moment where someone's like, "What are you wearing?" And then he puts on his outfit. He puts on his jacket, puts on his hat, grabs his pipe. I'm like, this is literally just like a superhero suit up moment for Oppenheimer, which is pretty funny. That one I don't have really any negative things to say about it. The second one, they do a bit of a name drop towards the very end of the movie, and I'm guessing it's based on real history, and Nolan just thought it was like a funny thing to add in. But the way it's delivered and the timing of it kind of feels like the way an MCU movie would drop like a villain's name to tease the next movie. It feels like a tease to a sequel when it happens.
Who is it? Because now I'm really curious. I don't. It says it's a spoiler.
Um, Only because of like the gravity they give the moment in the movie. So skip forward 15 seconds if you don't want to hear it. They mention John F. Kennedy, but the way it's name dropped,
That's kind of funny.
the way it's name dropped, it feels like it's promoting a sequel.
What are they? How old is John F. Kennedy at the time? 26? Like what?
He's a young up and coming senator.
How old is Kennedy when he was president? Like 50?
I don't know
In
the
his
answer to that.
40s? What year was he elected? Late 50s? I don't even remember. I feel like he was pretty young. I'm going to check the math on that. I could be grossly wrong. Forget. Let me know if he's listening this much.
There was the one historical accuracy pointed out. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter, where
No,
there's there was a picture going around of people in a stadium or like in an auditorium waving American flags, but it was the 50-star flag that didn't exist for like another 5 or 10 years after 1940 whatever they were actually that scene was taking place in. So
interesting.
I didn't notice that until it was pointed out to me on Twitter. But and then just to kind of address a common criticism I was hearing or reading on Twitter was that this was like a defense of Oppenheimer and a way to like either whitewash him or like make us feel remorseful for the guy who built the atom bomb or like anything like that, like kind of a redemption story. I don't think those people watched the movie. Like, I genuinely don't think they did because the movie doesn't say that.
Yeah, even from the trailers, I can tell that they're not trying to make him out to be like this hero or this guy that ended the war or whatnot. It's clearly something that he's very conflicted about having to do and eventually does. And like you said, that they show it before, during, and after him making the bomb. I imagine that that's got to be super tough after that motherfucker goes off. Like that's what I'm more interested in. I think that part of the movie is what I'm most excited to see. Is what the fuck is he wrestling with mentally after that thing goes off?
Yeah, and that was another thing. Like people were assuming it was going to be like propaganda or like pro-war or any of this stuff, and people were saying that after the trailer. I saw people saying it after the movie. That's not what this movie is. There's a lot of themes to this movie.
Is it a cautionary tale, though? Would you?
Yeah, certainly to
portray itself that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-hour movie. There's a lot of different themes. There's a lot of things you can pull out of this movie. But one of the explicitly stated themes is that, we shouldn't feel sorry for him. And it comes earlier in the movie, and there's different contexts and stuff. But like one of the few times that the movie states its actual theme, it contradicts what all these people are saying the movie is saying. So that's just something if you're seeing that on Twitter, assume that they haven't seen the movie or they just don't even know what they watched. But yeah, overall, I think this is pretty much Nolan doing his style best. It's weird because it is a biopic. It's not an action movie. It's obviously based on like a scientific premise, but it's not like a sci-fi premise like Interstellar or Inception or Tenet, where you're like relying on that kind of gimmick in a way. And it's not an action movie. Sure, you see the bomb blow up. That's like the most action you're getting in this movie. Everything else, you're looking at people who have doctorates in physics talking to each other, right? It's not like, you wouldn't think of it as like a very intense, very drawing movie, but
yeah,
for some reason it just works with his style, and the two found each other and just created, I don't know, something that I don't think any other director could have done.
Yeah, I mean, I think what comes from this, and the thing that I was most happy about, was the box office numbers. Because if he couldn't already before, I mean, this is almost a testament in itself, is that he got this movie greenlit. Because who the fuck wants to see a biopic about the guy that created the atomic bomb? If it's not Christopher Nolan pitching this idea to you, you're probably not taking it. But now with this, such an odd concept and such a, not like you mentioned, it's not like Inception, it's not like Interstellar, it's not like Tenet. There's no sci-fi shtick to get you into it. The fact that this movie did so well and is so well received, I think he can literally probably get anything he wants greenlit, like more than he already could. And I'm excited to see what comes next. I think that's the biggest thing that I take away. As someone that hasn't seen the movie yet, I'm just excited for the future.
Already waiting for the next one.
Yeah.
Oh, and so I don't know if you know this, something I should have mentioned earlier. Do you know why he wanted to make this Oppenheimer movie? Did you hear about the origin of that at all?
Now, is he like his cousin or something?
Apparently, at the end of production on Tenet, friend of the show Robert Pattinson gifted him the book American Prometheus.
That's so fucking cool.
Yeah,
That is so fucking cool.
yeah, it is.
That's awesome. I just
And
made me want to watch the movie even more.
and that's what inspired him to continue his research and ultimately write a movie about him. And
Fuck.
we have Robert Pattinson to thank for all of this.
Rob, if you're listening, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess the final note I'll wrap up on is I still left the theater in a similar way that I feel like I've left other Nolan movies, where it's something that I continue to think about, something that leaves room for discussion, which is why hopefully maybe even in a couple of weeks after you and Ben see it, we can talk about it in more detail. But it's not the same way that you walk away out of Inception or Interstellar or something that where your like mind is blown and you're trying to wrap your mind around the science. It's definitely more about the lasting impacts of what happened with the dropping of the bomb, the creation of the bomb, and drawing parallels to like current day issues in expanding science and technology, and especially like looking at the military industrial complex and everything like that. Like, I think that's potentially even more interesting than going, oh, is he still dreaming at the end of the movie? Like, obviously
Yeah.
that's a lot of fun too, don't get me wrong, but I do feel like there's maybe a little bit more important thoughts left in your head at the end of this movie. But that will pretty much do it for Oppenheimer. Bob, are you finally going to go see the movie now?
I will promise you I'll see the movie in the next 3 weeks.
Okay.
That's Scout's honor. I promise it.
Well, you might
It'll
have
be
to
the
wait.
next. Okay, here's a more realistic answer. It might be less than that. It might be more than that. I promise it'll be the next movie I see.
Okay. That doesn't leave me feeling confident if we're going to watch a movie anytime in the next couple of weeks for this podcast, but I guess I'll take what I can get. All right. Well, when I ended with Ben, I said, Ben, is there anything you want to say to Bob? Since I'm ending with you, is there anything you want to say to Ben?
Did Ben say "fuck you"?
I honestly don't even remember what he said.
Oh, okay, Ben, fuck you.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Uh,
And that'll do it for this week's episode. Appreciate you all for listening, as always, even if it was a slightly different type of episode. Hopefully next week, all three of the boys will be back together. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Peace.